Hey, good evening. Well, I don't know. This evening, for some reason, I didn't feel like going on a walk tonight. I worked a little bit today, but not all that much. But I don't know. I think the heat is just finally getting to me. I have worked outside some, and I think that takes its toll on you. Right now, it's not unbearable or anything like that. I'm kind of feeling it's probably in the 80s. But enough of the weather. So the attacks have begun on Vice President Harris, you noticed. They've directed their cannons at her, and that's natural, that's normal. They think she's going to be the nominee. So one of the attacks that they've been using is that she's the DHI candidate. Have you heard that abbreviation? That acronym, DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Okay, that's sort of like, what is it, the RT, I can't remember, is RTH or what? The thing that they hate and they say is being taught in schools about the racial history of our country. What is that called? Shoot, I'll remember. But anyways, back to the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's the label they want to put on her. So they're claiming that that's why she's the candidate. So this is like, this is a thing. And you know, if I was her, I'd embrace it. I'd say, yeah, yep, that's me. Take a look at the Democratic Party. We got black faces, we got brown faces, we got Asian faces. We're a very diverse party. We're very inclusionary. Yep, and we think that there should be equity in a lot of things. You know, everybody should be able to be at the starting line the same. We don't expect them all to finish first place, but people should have an equal chance. She should embrace that. I don't care if it's the DEI, if it's the CIA, if it's the FBI, if it's the NAACP, if it's the FHA, if it's the ASPCA, I don't care. So anyways, I was hoping that what she would do, and she doesn't have the cojones to do it, she could eliminate that. She could cut that ground right out from under them. All she'd have to say is, look, I believe in an open convention. I think I'd have to compete in an open convention and let the best person win. I'll take whatever the delegates rule on. Man, that would be awesome. And she might win. She's pretty sharp. But as I've said before, the convention should be opened up that way so that we can have a look at the potential candidates, because we want to pick the very best, the strongest candidate to go up against Godzilla. That's the only way we're going to win, and she does have baggage. She's from California. She has a history, and that's what they're going to harp on. So I think that was about it on my mind for political stuff. Not too much has happened. I mean, now we're expecting every day for there to be some kind of a bombshell, because there have been so many things that have happened here in the last, I guess, well, the debate was on the 27th, so tomorrow's the 26th. It was on the 27th of June, so it'll be 1 month, day after tomorrow that went down. So, yeah, it's been kind of quiet other than the attacks on her and the interest in whoever she's going to pick for her vice presidential running mate. Sounds like this guy from Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. He sounds like he might have the inside track. And, of course, they want to win Pennsylvania. I forget how many electoral votes are involved in that, but it's pretty important. So that's kind of what the interest was today. Other than that, let's see what else is going on. I was thinking about doing a quick little synopsis on all the places that I've lived in that I can remember for, historical interest for my descendants, if they are interested at all. So I think I mentioned I was born in Detroit, actually Royal Oak, Michigan. That's a suburb just outside of Detroit. September 15th, 1945. My dad was away at war at that time. The war had ended, actually. About a month before that, Japan had surrendered after they dropped the bombs on them. So that was the first place that I lived in. I'm pretty sure it was public housing. I remember seeing a picture of myself and my older sister. I must have been maybe 2 or 3 years old. She would have been about 6. We're outside in front of this, looks like a 2-story housing complex. And there's snow on the ground. We're all dressed up in winter clothes. We got mittens on. And then I do remember going to elementary school there. There was an elementary school called Star School, S-T-A-R-R Elementary. And I walked to school when I was like 5 years old. I walked to elementary school. My mom probably took me there one time, showed me the way, and then that was it. I walked from that point on. And I remember something that happened when I was probably about 5 or so. Myself and a friend of mine were playing, and we were playing in a house that was under construction. There was nobody there. I think it was during the week. I'm pretty sure it was during the week. We were playing inside this house, and there weren't any construction workers there. It was just like the drywall had just been finished on it. And I went inside of a closet. There was a closet, like a hall closet there. Went in there, and he closed the door. He was on the outside. He closed the door, and there was no door handle, but the latch mechanism was installed in the door. So I couldn't open the door. I could look through. There was a little hole there where the handle would slip through. I could look through there, but I was locked in there. So I told my friend, I said, go get my mom. Go tell my mom that I'm locked in here. So you know what he did? He goes home and doesn't tell anybody because he thinks he's going to get in trouble. And this happened in the morning. So I'm in that closet all day, and I'm just crying. I'm beating on it, and basically I've pretty much given up. Well, sometime in the afternoon, I guess my sister, who was 3 years older than me, she was walking home from school, and she heard me crying. So she's looking around, well, where's that coming from? And she sees it's this house. So she goes over there. She goes in the house. She goes to this closet and, says, is that you? Yeah, I'm in here. Go get mom. So she goes and gets my mom, brings my mom down there. My mom assesses the situation. I can't believe I was in there all that time. And my mom, I don't know if she'd called the police yet or what, but I think she was pretty embarrassed by the whole thing. So she goes home and she gets a door handle off one of our doors there at the house. She brings that down there, puts it in the slot, opens the door, and I get out. Wow. And I think that's why I'm still a little bit claustrophobic after all these years, being locked in that closet, being a little kid. So, 5 years old, we moved to California. Dad loads us all up in the car. There's 4 kids, my mom and my dad. My younger brother has not come along yet. He's going to be born in California. I think it's 1954 when he's born. So we travel across the country, old Route 66, and when we get to California, we go to my uncle's house, my dad's brother, and he's got a house, he's got a wife, and I think at that time he just had 2 kids, and his house is in Westminster, California. Back in those days, Orange County was very rural and people had big lots. I mean, he had acres. He probably had 3 or 4 acres, and he had a little gentleman's farm. He had some animals. He had some goats and some chickens and stuff. Now, my uncle was a machinist, had a machine shop. So he wasn't really a farmer, but I think he fantasized having a place like that where he could have some animals, and had some pigs there. And I remember my sister and I feeding the pigs. My aunt gave us some table scraps and stuff. Take that out there and give it to the pigs. So we go out there and we climb up on this fence that's holding the pigs in. And we got some tomatoes and stuff. And instead of just dumping the stuff on the ground, we start throwing it at the pigs. We're throwing it, hitting them in the face with tomatoes and stuff like that. And the pigs didn't care. They could care less. And we just thought it was so funny. I mean, we just laughed and laughed about that. So we were there for probably a couple of months. Don't remember exactly, but then we moved from there. We moved to Wilmington, which is not too far from Westminster. But I think Wilmington is in LA County because it's not too far from the harbor. And my parents got this little tract house. Probably wasn't much more than about, if it was 3 bedrooms, I would be surprised. If it was a 3-bedroom, it was really a small 3-bedroom. So my younger brother had still not come along yet, so there were 6 of us. And we lived in that house for probably a couple of years. And then we moved over to Long Beach. We moved over into a house that's still there. The neighborhood's still there. It's on the corner of Easy Avenue and Cameron. It's right on the corner. We moved in there, and my dad opened up a little coffee shop that was maybe a block away from there on Wardlow Road. There was a grocery store in there, and the building was kind of a strange shape. It was in the straight shape of a triangle. And in the narrow part of the triangle, there was this restaurant. And I guess it had been open before and was closed up, and my dad got possession of it. So he opened it up, reopened it, and called it Coral's Malt Shop. So we lived there in that house. I remember starting the 3rd grade there at John Muir Elementary School. It was right at the end of the school year. We moved there. My dad had a habit of doing this, uprooting us right at the end of the school year. So we got to go to a new school, and it's emotionally hard for kids because, you know, you've got some rhythm going, you got some friends, and now you're dumped into a new school where you don't know anybody. So I remember the first day I didn't want to go. My mom basically had to drag me to the school. It was about probably, it must have been a half a mile or so away from where we lived. So she dragged me over there that first day, and then from that day on, I was fine. I, went on my own, once again, walked to school, walked home. Sometimes I'd even walk home for lunch. I forget if lunch was an hour or a half hour. You wouldn't think it would be an hour in junior high school, but there were times when I went home and I had lunch. I had a can of soup and headed on back to school. So I spent the remainder of the 3rd grade, like the last month of the 3rd grade, and then the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade there. And then we moved to a house that was basically right across the street from John Muir Elementary School. It's on 32nd Avenue. And then I started junior high school, William Logan Stevens Junior High School. And I went there 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then we moved to, the east side of Long Beach, over by Studebaker Road. And we were there for about a year. And I went to Long Beach Poly for 1 year, the 10th grade. And just like as usual, at the end of the school year, 1 month to go, my dad decided to moved us to Tustin. So then I enrolled at Tustin High School. I was there for what was left of the month of May and part of June, and that would have been my sophomore year. And then the 11th and 12th grade, I finished up there at Tustin High, graduated in 1963. And I always say there are 5 days in my life that were significant days, and the first one was the day I graduated from high school, then the day I met the fabulous Fabian, and eventually got married to her. And then the day my kids were born, my son and my daughter. And then the day I got my Shodan in Kyokushin Karate. Shodan is 1st degree black belt. Eventually I made it to 3rd degree. I think I was about 70 years old when I got my 3rd Dan, because I'd started pretty late. I was like 50, 51 years old when I went into Shihan Mike's dojo there in Yucca Valley, which is really old for somebody to go in there. But I was in good shape. I felt good, and I did okay. Took me maybe 6 or 7 years for me to get my black belt there. And then I hung with it, and eventually I started teaching my own class, and eventually ended up with Hanchi Terry, and under Hanchi Terry I got my second and third Dan. So that's what I went out with at 70 was third degree black, which I always wanted to get the fourth, because the fourth is really a high rank. When you're a fourth degree black belt, you can promote other people to black belt on your own. Until you achieve that rank, you can't promote anybody to a black belt. That has to be done in front of a grading council. You can't do it on your own. So I never made it to fourth Dan, but third is pretty respectable in Kyokushin. So let's see, what else is going on? Those are the places that I lived then, and then, let's see, after Tustin, I kind of kicked around. My mom and dad got a house in Long Beach, and after I got out of high school, I lived there. There was like a guest house out behind it there, and I lived there for probably a year or so. And that's when I drove the paint truck for Ernie Knapp Paint Company in Long Beach. I was 18 years old, and I was a delivery boy, delivered paint for him. So then I kicked around some different jobs, and eventually I went to work for my dad when I was probably, I must have been 20 or so, when I went to work at Don's Burger Bar there in Anaheim. And I had rented a room from some people there in Anaheim. I was just living in a room. I had a bathroom there. There was another bedroom next to it, and another guy had rented. We shared the same bathroom. And I forget how much it was a month. It was probably like $50 a month or something. So lived there. And then, of course, when the Fabulous Fabian and I got married in '68, we rented a house in Fullerton that was just a few blocks from Fullerton Junior College, because Fabian was going to the college and she wanted to finish up there and get her AA degree. So we were there in that apartment there on Commonwealth and Berkeley. It's on the corner of Commonwealth and Berkeley. It's a 2-story building, and the bottom story is just garage parking, and the top story, the second story, was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And that's where we spent our first year together. Then, let's see, how much longer did we stay there? We got married in '68, June of '68, and I don't think we left Orange County until about February of 1970. So we were there for a year and a half, and in that period of time I worked for, I think when we got married, I was working for Bell Brothers Catering Company, and I drove a catering truck. And then when we moved to Northern California, that was in February of 1970, I think. Yeah, it was about then. So when I was driving the catering truck, I didn't go to work for the catering truck when we got married. I went to work for a company called Keeler Foods. They were a company that had been delivering grocery products to Don's Burger Bar. And it was stuff like canned goods, coffee, rice, that non-perishable type stuff. And so they hired me. They said, okay, if you're getting out of the restaurant business, we got a job for you driving a delivery truck. So that's what I did, Monday through Friday, had the weekends off, and serviced restaurants throughout Orange County. So I had that job, and then after I left there, I had some friends that had they had a dairy delivery service. They didn't own a dairy, but they had a dairy truck, and they bought dairy products from this big commercial dairy, and they had a bunch of public schools that they serviced, or cafeterias. And so they hired me to do that delivery route, and I did that at night. I had all the keys to all the cafeterias and stuff, and I go in there and restock all the milk, orange juice, cottage cheese, all that kind of stuff. So I did that for about 3 months. That was a pretty good job. I think they were paying me like $200 a week, which was really good for me, because our rent there in Anaheim, or in Fullerton, was $90 a month. So I was doing okay, but that only lasted about 3 months. they weren't able to make enough money to keep me on. They had to let me go, and one of them took the route over and went back to work doing that. So after I left there, then I think I went to work. I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly what order it was in that I went to work for the catering truck company, but anyhow, with the catering truck company, one of my stops was a construction site where they were building tract homes, and a couple of guys working there were the surveyors. And one day they told me, they said, hey, we're not going to be here next week. We're leaving. I said, where are you going? They said, well, we bought a campground up in Northern California in this little town called Coloma. It's where gold was discovered in California. You should come up there and visit us. It's a pretty neat place. So I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. So one weekend, the fabulous Fabian and I got the Volkswagen, drove north. It's about an 8-hour drive. We left like on a Friday. Spent Friday night, Saturday night there, and I think we came back home on a Sunday. And they had a little camper shell there that we stayed in, and we just fell in love with the area. And those guys were talking to me. They said, yeah, you ought to move up here, man. And I said, well, what the heck am I going to do up here? And they said, well, you were in the restaurant business, right? Yeah. Well, there's a restaurant down the street there in Coloma that's closed up. It's got all the equipment in there. We know the guy that owns it. You probably let you go back in there and open it up. Really? Okay, so we got in touch with that guy. Sure enough, we made a deal with him. Then we found a little house to rent right on the American River. It was like $85 a month. And so we moved up there in February of 1970. So right now we're at 21 minutes. I think that's probably enough for tonight. There's more moving that's taking place after that, because eventually we came back to Joshua Tree and lived in Joshua Tree, and I'll give you the lowdown on that the next time. So yeah, we're almost 22 minutes in. That's enough for tonight. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and we will see you tomorrow night. Good night.